Part 240. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2395. When the morning glow appeared on the horizon, Xiao Yuanzheng reached out and patted Zhou Man's shoulder and said, "The medicine in the kitchen has been warm, so I asked Imperial Dr. Lu to grab another pair and give it to the kitchen to boil, dump them in time." This time Man Bao did not object and nodded. Under the premise that there was already a death, Man Bao also changed his mind. Although the sequelae of the strong medicine may be greater, at least people can save their lives. Man Bao lowered her eyes and thought, and went through all the patients she had seen since the vaccination in her mind, but she still couldn't find the problem. It is clear that the scab is about to heal, how can it suddenly deteriorate? Xiao Yuanzheng also looked at the brighter and brighter rays of the sky and recalled the patients and data he had seen during this time, and after a while he said, "After breakfast, I left one person to guard the two of them, and all the patients were treated for the rest. Go through it, rearrange their residences, put similar situations together, and do a good job of recording their data. Man Bao should go down." Xiao Yuanzheng got up, patted her shoulder again and said, "Good boy, don't be sad. Smallpox, a chronic disease that has been around for thousands of years, it's not that we can cut it off completely." Man Bao lowered his head and said nothing. Xiao Yuan was turning around and entering the ward to look at the two patients, leaving Man Bao to think for himself. Man Bao thought for a while, but got up and went to the next ward. There was only one person in it, number 121. At this time, his face was already blue, and his whole body was cold. The needle on his body has been pulled out, and he is quietly lying on the bed at this time. When it is determined that he is indeed dead from smallpox, he will be burned and turned into ashes before being sent back to his home. Man Bao stepped forward, picked up his hand and looked at it carefully, and finally glanced outside. Keek said thoughtfully, "No one is outside." Man Bao took out a set of tools from the space, pierced his hand and took 2 drops of blood, sealed it and took a clip to take 2 pimples on his body, sealed them together and put them in the teaching room. Man Bao and Keek said, "Send an email to Teacher Mo and ask him to help test these 2 things." Keek responded and sent an email to Teacher Mo according to Man Bao's intention. Man Bao took a step back, looked at number 121 carefully, and finally pulled up the quilt to cover his face. She also tucked the quilt for him. "What are you doing?" Man Bao was taken aback by the sudden sound, looked up and saw a person standing at the door with his back to the light. When she looked up, she could only see the figure, but couldn't see the face of the person for a long time. The person at the door took 2 steps in, and when she saw her covering her from head to toe, she frowned and said, "The kitchen has prepared hot soup and rice, and Xiao Yuan is calling you to come over to eat, so I will be busy in a while." Only then did Man Bao realize that it was Imperial Dr. Lu. She gave an "oh" and turned to go out with her. Today, all the patients are not allowed to go out, they all need to sit and wait in their own rooms, so there are only a few of them in the huge open space, and a few soldiers who are instructed. When Man Bao stepped forward, Imperial Physician Lu motioned her to wash her hands, change her coat, and come over for dinner. Man Bao turned around to clean his hands, and when he came back, Xiao Yuanzheng and the others had already started to sit and eat. Man Bao sat down in an empty seat, took a bowl of soup and took 2 sips, and asked, "Who's staying?" Xiao Yuan said righteously, "Truly Dr. Lu." He said, "The 2 patients don't have much reaction now, and they are relatively calm. Imperial Physician Lu just took a nap. The 3 of us are busy first, and we will wait until noon to see the situation and change." Man Bao nodded. She and Imperial Physician Lu are both busy day and night. If the patient's condition does not worsen, it will be her turn next. If none of the 4 could rest. After Man Bao finished drinking the soup, his stomach warmed a little and he gained some strength, and then he started to bite a steamed bun. They had already checked all the patients last night, but today they checked all the patients together. Xiao Yuanzhang said, a room with pox scabs, a room with the same number of cowpox vaccine, a room with deteriorating symptoms, and a room for patients with similar conditions. Zhou Imperial Doctor writes quickly, you can make a record, be sure to make it clear now, we still have to write an excerpt and report it. Man Bao should go down. So 3 people checked the past one room by one room. They checked it last night. In fact, everyone knew it. Checking it again today is just to screen and confirm it again. The 180 people who were first vaccinated, Manbao and the others have done statistics before, and the poxes are basically between 1 and 6, and only a few people have more than 6 poxes, but there are only 15 poxes at most. Manbao flipped through the records and said, there are 12 people in total. This percentage is really not very high. Xiao Yuan is checking them one by one. During the day, they can see more clearly and more intuitively. Some people's acne scabs are about to fall off. Xiao Yuan is reaching out and pressing it. It is indeed cured. At that time, you can go home and take care of yourself. Xiao Yuanzhang was talking about the appearance. Imperial physician Lu and Manbao took a look. After confirming that it was correct, Manbao recorded it, and then these people were transferred to the outermost room. Xiao Yuanzhang said, you guys are getting better soon. The person who got the lottery will go to the outer room with their own bedding, and give the room inside to the person who is still suffering from acne. They didn't have any opinion on this, and immediately took the quilt and went out. One of them even turned around and asked them, sir, our acne is healed, so we are still alive, right? Xiao Yuanzhang did not promise them this time, but said, you guys should live out first. They left a little nervously. At noon, Imperial physician Lu came over and said to them, the 2 of them have a high fever. I took a look at the pimples on the chest and back, as well as on the neck, and it seems to be growing on the face. The 3 of them stopped the inspection and ran back to see. Both of them are still awake, and even in good spirits. Maybe because of the fever, their eyes are very bright, and they seem to be glowing. Seeing so many imperial doctors visiting them, they couldn't lie down for a while. Xiao Yuan was raising his hand to stop them from getting up, went forward to feel their pulse, and after looking at them one by one, signaled Imperial physician Lu and Zhou Man to take a look. After seeing them all, and checking the bodies of the 2, Xiao Yuanzhang said to Manbao, give them a needle, and we'll give them another prescription. Manbao went up to puncture them, and when she finished stabbing and remembered what was in the classroom, she wanted to puncture their fingers again to get some blood, so she quietly raised her head to look at Xiao Yuanzhang and others. The 3 were standing at the table at the door discussing the prescription. See you at 4 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2396. Manbao took out a concave ceramic piece the size of a fingernail, took out a very thick short needle and stabbed his finger. She raised her head and glanced at the patient. Because he was laying the needle on his back and on his head. There is a needle, so I dare not move. Naturally I don't know what Zhou Man has done. He didn't dare to move when he noticed that his finger was pressed several times, thinking that Zhou Man was stabbing a needle. Manbao took the blood, put the things into the classroom under the cover of the quilt, and was about to press his fingers with gauze to stop the bleeding, when Manbao saw that his fingers were a little yellow, and the cracks of his nails were still black. Manbao seems to have seen it on number 121 as well. Manbao frowned slightly, because all the people who were selected were slaves. When taking care of their bodies, the hospital would also pay great attention to hygiene, not only let them wash their hair and bathe, change into clean clothes, but also let them have their fingernails and toenails repaired. During this period of time, they don't have to work anymore. Basically, they just eat, chat, and bask in the sun. They have cut their nails twice. How can they be so dirty? Man Bao put down his hand and turned to look at the other person's hand. Sure enough, he found that his fingers were also a little yellowed, and there were dirty things in his nails. Man Bao frowned and asked the two of them, "What did you do yesterday?" The two people lying on their stomachs looked inexplicable. "We didn't do anything." Man Bao paused and asked, "Do you know Fang Su?" Fang Su was number 121. The two of them didn't dare to move their necks, so they could only say, "No, no, we often eat together." "You were together yesterday?" "Yes." Xiao Yuan was waiting for someone to come in after discussing the prescription, and just happened to hear Man Bao asking the two of them, "What did the three of you do yesterday? Let's talk about it after you get up." The two of them said a little nervously, "I didn't do anything, just wash, eat, and then walk around. We didn't go out, and we didn't dare to get close to the fence." Man Bao asked, "I see that your fingernails are a little dirty, how did you get it?" "Oh, that was probably made when the straw was cut." "What are you doing with the straw?" "Feed the cows," the two said. "Isn't there a cow shed not far away?" "We saw that the cow caregiver was too busy, so we helped him." Xiao Yuan's face changed slightly, he lowered his head and looked at Zhou Man, and then he stepped forward and asked, "You are just shredding grass, haven't you approached the cow?" The two were repeatedly questioned, and they became a little scared, and quickly denied, "No, we didn't get close to the cow." Imperial Physician Lu slapped the table angrily, "If you don't tell the truth, tell me, what are you doing in the cowshed? If you don't tell the truth, you will be sent to serve him with severe punishment." Xiao Yuanzheng glanced at him, implying that he should hold back a little and scare people to a certain degree. Now that they are so sick, don't they say that they can really drag people down and beat them? Who knew that before he had time to withdraw his warning gaze, the person lying on the bed cried out in tears, I said, we all said." One said, "We really feed the cows." They all said that the cows with pox will not be asked for outside. "When we finally leave, these cows will be distributed to us." He said, "We thought that although this cow has survived smallpox, we also have it, so we are not afraid. If we can get a cow back, it will be convenient for farming and other things. We will just go and see." The other continued, "There are 7 cows in the cowshed, and they have to eat a lot of straw every day. They have to mix it with beans and feed them. The soldier who takes care of the cows has only one hand, so we went to help. In fact, we didn't do much, we just chopped some straw and stirred 2 buckets of forage for them to eat." Xiao Yuanzheng asked them, "How many cows did you feed yourself?" Just 2. Man Bao asked, "There are 7 cows in total, why do you only feed 2? The 2 cows are cooked, and they are not the same as the other 5. The other 5 cows look heavy and heavy. We all feel that it is not easy to plow the ground, so we did not feed them." Xiao Yuanzheng turned around and left, and Man Bao wanted to follow, so Xiao Yuanzheng ordered, "You stay here and watch them perform the needles, and then go over when the needles are over." Man Bao can only stay. Man Bao sat in a chair watching them. The two of them were very uneasy and asked in sweat, "Sir, can't we touch the cow?" Man Baodao, "It is reasonable to say that it does not hinder you. You have already developed acne, but the acne is not yet healed, and the antibodies in the body may not have formed." "Have you touched the acne on the cow?" "No," the two said immediately, "we have pimples all over our bodies. This thing looks disgusting, how could we touch it?" They said, "We just touched his neck, mouth, and nose to avoid his pimples." When Man Bao heard this, he was speechless for a while. Seeing that she didn't speak for a long time, the two of them were apprehensive. "Big Lord Man Baodao, there is also our negligence in this. I thought that you have already vaccinated, so you don't have to avoid it, but it turned out that we were wrong." Man Bao counted the time, and when it arrived, he pulled the needle out for them, and asked, apart from the three of you, who else has touched the people in the cowshed? The two looked at each other, lowered their heads in Zhou Man's eyes, and said several names. This is all they know. Man Bao nodded, touched their body temperature and got up to find Xiao Yuan Zheng and others. They were standing in the cowshed, and the situation was almost understood. Xiao Yuan said righteously, all 7 cows have pox, and these 2 cows had pox the day before yesterday. Yesterday was the time of high fever and pox. Is it because of this infection? Xiao Yuan Zheng, not necessarily, we have to continue to check, let's check everyone first. The etiology is the most difficult thing to determine. People are not roundworms in their stomachs. They can see what is inside and know the whole process of their disease from the beginning. Many things can only be guessed. Xiao Yuan Zheng instructed the person guarding the cowshed, be careful, no one is allowed to approach the cowshed anymore. He turned around and took everyone back, and said to Zhou Man, continue the investigation, group all those with similar illnesses together, and see how many recurrences there are in total. The 4 of them had been busy all day and looked at all the patients well, and finally sat on the chairs to sum up. Man Bao said, there are 27 people who are still feverish, except for those 2, the others all have low-grade fever, and there is no fever at present. Signs of recurring acne breakouts. Xiao Yuan was making a note, and Man Bao said, I asked them, there are 12 people who have been in the bullpen recently. Except for the 3 of them, there is no abnormality in the others. It has been determined that there are 67 people who will fall off the pox scab when they mature, and 58 people who are about to mature. Imperial Physician Lu sighed, it's almost there. Man Bao nodded, in terms of the proportion of the number of people on both sides, cowpox has not failed, but now there are deaths, it is not a success. Xiao Yuan Zheng said, find out the cause. In a few days, the cowpox will mature, and the next batch of people will be vaccinated. Man Bao and Imperial Physician Lu responded. See you at 7. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2397. When Friday Lang returned home, Bai Shan was already waiting. He asked, Brother Friday, can Man Bao come out with a letter? No, said Friday Lang, I asked the Imperial Guards, and they didn't know either. I just heard that Xiao Yuan Zheng brought Imperial Physician Lu in before dark last night, and he hasn't come out yet. Bai Shan frowned, took 2 steps and said, I'm afraid there is something wrong with the experimenter. Friday Lang was worried, what's the problem? Will Man Bao be questioned? Bai Shandao, it's an experiment, and it's something like smallpox, or it's normal to die, as long as it's not a human error, it's just. Bai Shan frowned and said, it's just that our experiment in the western regions went well. If it fails here, Man Bao may not be able to accept it. Friday Lang was worried, then what should we do? I'll write a letter, and when the 5th brother delivers things tomorrow, give the letter to the Imperial Guard and pass it in. But in fact, even if the letter is passed in, it can't reach Man Bao. Now Julan and Zibing can't see her, she and Xiao Yuan Zheng are in the ward area and cannot go out. The 2 patients had a fever that evening. Like number 121, they were anxious and violent. Fortunately, Xiao Yuan Zheng had already prepared them. They had always prepared acupuncture and moxibustion soup. Number 98 also used a powerful medicine, which saved their lives. The 4 of them barely slept all night, and only squinted for less than 2 hours in turn. Even Man Bao was in a bad mood, not to mention Imperial Physician Lu and others. After all, they haven't slept for 2 days and 2 nights. Xiao Yuan was staring at the pimples that appeared on their bodies, and nodded after a while, It's not as red and bright as before. Xiao Yuan was putting his hand into the quilt, and after confirming that the fever was no longer high, he said, Tianyi Lu will stay on duty, and the rest should go down to rest. Xiao Yuanzhang thought for a while and said, take a 2-hour break. Imperial physician Lu and Manbao breathed a sigh of relief and bowed before stepping back. Xiao Yuan nodded to Imperial physician Lu and went out with them. As soon as they left the ward area, the servants immediately brought hot water up. Manbao and the others washed their hair and showered, and their clothes, shoes, and socks were all burned directly. Manbao sat on the couch with only his jacket on and a cloak. Before Julan could give her the letter from Bai Shan, Manbao was already leaning on the couch and fell asleep. Julan hurriedly stepped forward, Madam, go to sleep after you have eaten. Manbao replied vaguely, wipe your hair dry and eat when you wake up. After 2 days and 2 nights of lack of sleep, Manbao felt that there was nothing more attractive than sleeping, not even eating. Julan could only wipe her hair finely. After drying her hair, she spread it on the couch. He Zibing took the quilt and covered her. Manbao slept very deeply, and it was Julan who woke her up. Manbao remembered that it was her turn to be on duty, so he quickly got up and put on clothes. He drank the soup that had been warm all the time, then took a cake and went to the ward area while eating. Julan followed step by step with a food box in hand. Miss, here are all the meals that have been kept hot on the stove. They are all packed for you, you can take them in and eat them. Manbao fell asleep without eating. Now he was so hungry that his chest was touching his back. He nodded while biting the cake. He successfully ate the cake before entering the ward area. Go in the box and take care of Imperial physician Lu. Imperial Dr. Lu's complexion was much worse than hers. When he saw her, he said, I had a high fever once, and there were 5 more pimples on the 98th, but it's gone now. Look at it. Manbao put down the food box, went to feel their pulse, and confirmed that their condition had not changed much, then nodded and let Imperial physician Lu go out. Manbao took the food box to eat in the yard. When she opened it, she found a letter was still under the plate. She took it out and saw that it was written by Bai Shan. Then he asked Keek while eating, has Mr. Mo still answered? No. Manbao was a little depressed, it seems that teacher Mo has been very busy recently. As soon as the voice fell, there was a ding-dong in the mailbox. Manbao widened her eyes and immediately put down the meatballs on her chopsticks. She looked left and right, then closed her eyes slightly and sank into her consciousness to read the email. Teacher Mo sent her a bunch of documents, and Manbao's eyes were dazzled. It was different from the inspection report she had seen before. She said to Keek, come on, find an emoji with question marks all over its head and send it over. Without hesitation, Keek directly selected an emoji with the most question marks on his head and sent it over. After sending the email, teacher Mo, who was about to go offline, saw it and directly replied to her, online. Manbao touched her chin, looked left and right, and then went directly to the room where the number 121 corpse was still parked next to it. She closed the doors and windows, and said to Keek, keep an eye on me. Coco responds. Manbao entered the classroom. Teacher Mo held the report in her hand and projected it to her, what do you understand? Manbao nodded, I don't understand it. Oh, yes, Mr. Mo rubbed his forehead with some headache, I forgot, you are not the group of doctors under my hands, you have never learned these. Manbao stared at him with wide eyes. Teacher Mo frowned and thought about it, opened the documents one by one and said, the blood of the 2 people you gave has problems, and with the pox pulp sample you gave, it should be that the virus strain in the body has mutated. Teacher Mo said, such a mutation is either caused by environmental changes, or caused by the infection of secondary differentiated strains. Manbao immediately took out a pen and paper to record, teacher Mo said a lot, and said to her, this mutant strain has always been urgent and heavy, and if you encounter it, you will directly use antidote and antidote pills, but in the face of this the cure rate of antidote and antidote pill will not be very high. The cure and prevention of smallpox by jaduk pills can only reach 80%. Before I asked the laboratory people to extract the virus from their blood, and then analyzed the antidote, I found that only less than 40% killing effect. Different from Joe Man and the others, it takes a lot of time to do an experiment. Because of the complete equipment and facilities, Teacher Mo can do the experiment much faster. But it takes a lot of time to do in vivo experiments. Teacher Mo said, if you want specific numbers, I will ask your senior brothers to do some in vivo experiments for you, but it is estimated that it will take about half a month to get the results. Man Bao was taken aback and asked, is it a human? See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2398. Teacher Mo looked at her and said, what do you think? It's impossible to use intelligent creatures for this kind of indeterminate experiment. It's a star beast. After thinking about it, Man Bao said, but humans and beasts are different, otherwise we wouldn't let cows get smallpox first, and then inoculate humans with cowpox. But they all have something in common. Otherwise, how could human pox be planted in cows, and why can cowpox be planted in humans? After the experimental data comes out, it needs to be analyzed. Teacher Mo didn't teach Joe Man how to deal with and analyze data. There was really too much to learn. She didn't even analyze some data terms. He decided to give her the results at that time. He asked, is something wrong with your experiment? Man Bao nodded, one person died, and 2 others are now in danger. We guess it has something to do with the cows that they came into contact with, but I feel more than that. After Man Bao finished speaking, Keek reminded, someone is here. Man Bao hurriedly said to Teacher Mo, Mr. Mo, in addition to the experiment, I have a new patient on my hands. I'll send you his pulse case later. Teacher Mo responded. Man Bao exited the classroom and opened the door to see Xiao Yuan circling around her dining table with his hands behind his back. Hearing the movement, he turned around and looked at it. Is this a bad appetite? You ran to see the corpse after eating how much? Man Bao said, I'm not full yet. Xiao Yuan Zheng said, it's already cold, let the kitchen warm it up for you again. Man Bao should go down. The Xiao Hospital is deciding to postpone the vaccination of the second batch of patients. But the results of the first batch of patients also came out soon. The 2 people with high fever slowly stopped developing acne and got better quickly. Patient number 98 is a little slow to respond now, but the person is not completely stupid, and it is not bad. The rest of the people with fever also repeated, but they all survived in the end. When they all recovered, the Taiyuan hospital let them come into contact with smallpox again, and they were relieved to find that they were all immune. At least the results of this experiment were good. So Xiao Yuan Zheng wrote a book and handed it over. Emperor, one of the 180 people died, and the other was stupid. How do you think I will let people get vaccinated? Who knows if they will become these 2 people? Xiao Yuan Zheng could only kneel and express that he would make persistent efforts to test out better vaccines and treatment prescriptions as soon as possible. The emperor nodded and instructed, don't be in a hurry at this time, anyway, the land in Huangzhuang is given to you, you just use it. Xiao Yuan was thinking, the place is second, the most important thing is money. However, because at the beginning, he went for 0 mistakes, and now there is an accident, Xiao Yuan Zheng is not very confident, so there is no matter of raising money. The matter of money can be put aside for the time being, because he has not yet determined whether the second batch of vaccinia should be from those 2 cows. If it is true that they were infected with smallpox a second time because of contact with cows, will the cowpox from the 2 cows be inoculated into people with such bad results? That's more serious than a human pox. So Xiao Yuan Zheng decided to think about it. During the time he considered, Man Bao and Imperial Physician Lu were finally released and could go home. Considering that they had not had a vacation for 30 days and were overworked during this time, Xiao Yuanzheng gave them 4 days off. Man Bao muttered as he walked out, 39, shouldn't it be a 6-day vacation? Imperial Physician Lu stood beside her empty-handed, and heard the words, if you keep talking, Xiao Yuanzheng will hear it, and it won't even be 4 days. Man Bao closed his mouth. They can't take anything out of here, they can only go out with their clothes on. The waiter and the waiter stood on the side of the road with their hands together to watch them, and Man Bao walked over and said to them, my 5th brother comes here every day to deliver vegetables and eggs, and I'll let them bring you medicinal herbs, so you follow the previous recipe to take a bath, soak your feet and drink medicine, and wait for me to return before continuing to puncture the needle. The servant boy responded with a smile, and after thanking Zhou Man, he stood on the side of the road and watched them go away. When Man Bao walked out of Wangchuang, she saw Bai Shan standing beside the carriage. Her eyes lit up immediately, and she left Imperial Physician Lu and ran over. Bai Shan looked at her with a smile. Man Bao stood in front of him, his eyes were a little red. Bai Shan saw it, reached out and wiped the corner of her eyes, and whispered, get in the car, your sister-in-law made meat pie this morning, there's a lot of meat in it, and it's still hot now. Man Bao nodded and supported his hand into the car. Bai Shan then looked at Imperial Physician Lu, bowed and greeted him, thanking him for taking care of Man Bao during this time. Imperial Physician Lu nodded calmly, got into his car, and knocked on the wall to let the driver go first. Bai Shan got into the car, and Man Bao had already pulled out the meat pie and gnawed it. Tears fell while she was eating. She didn't know why, but in front of him, she was just so wronged. Bai Shan already knew what was going on inside, reached out to wipe her tears, and whispered, today's affairs, the teacher of the future, let's pay more attention later, find a way to solve it, people who die are not dead in vain, stupid. People are not stupid. Man Bao nodded, but I still feel a little uncomfortable in my heart. Bai Shan thought about it and said, I'll take you to see Lu Huan when you eat the cake. Man Bao asked, what are you doing to see him? Bai Shan smiled, his last exam today. Man Bao was stunned for a moment, and then he remembered, yes, he wants to study the Ming scriptures. Bai Shan opened the curtain and said to the guards outside, tell the carriage behind to send the Western Cake Julan and the others back. Let's go to the Gongyuan. The guard responded, and after Daji entered the city, he turned the intersection and went to the Gongyuan. The carriage stopped not far from the Gongyuan. Bai Shan jumped out of the carriage, reached out to help Man Bao get off the carriage, and led her into the tea house. Bai Erlang was sitting in the lobby with Erlang's legs crossed, listening to people's stories. He listened with great interest. Man Bao listened and found that it was actually the biography of Xiang Mingxiu. She couldn't help blinking and walked over to pat Bai Erlang on the shoulder. It's been so many years, why are you still talking about this book? Bai Erlang was startled, and the dried fruit in his hand almost flew out. He said, it has been a classic for many years. It's not because there are many students entering Beijing for the exam, so the tea house is talking about it again. He said, good stories don't come often, so naturally, good stories should be taken out and repeated. Bai Shan said, why are you sitting down here, Yin Or? Upstairs, with my eldest brother, I wanted to hear about books here, so I came down. Can't you hear it up there? But it doesn't feel the same. Listening to it above, how can it be refreshing to hear it here? Bai Shan stretched out his hand and took him off, stop talking nonsense, and hurry up. Bai Dalan and Yin He were drinking tea in the box, and his eldest brother was also studying the classics in it this time, so he was waiting here to see the situation. I'm too tired tonight, so I have to break my promise. Let's continue tomorrow and the next day. See you tomorrow. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2399. Seeing Man Bao, Bai Dalan couldn't help but ask, "Why don't you go home and rest?" Bai Erlang sat down next to his brother and said, "Going home is a rest, and eating and drinking in a tea house is also a rest. It's better to stay here, it's not fun at home." Bai Shan brought Man Bao a cup of tea and explained with a smile, "Today is the last day, so let's take a look, just waiting for Lu Huan to come out." In fact, there were a lot of people waiting for the candidates to come out in the cafeteria, but half of them were watching the fun, and the other half came with other ideas, but there were not many relatives who were really anxiously waiting. Most of the relatives were squatting not far from the entrance of the Gongyuan at this time, as if they were a little closer to the examination room, and the relatives inside could feel their strength in passing the examination. Listening to the storytellers and the constant applause downstairs, Man Bao felt much better. Bai Shan called the guy to order a lot of dishes for her to eat. When she was full and sat by the window with a cup of tea and watched the guests arriving downstairs, there was a loud bang from the Gongyuan. Bai Shan also put down the teacup in his hand and said, "They are coming out." Man Bao immediately said, "Let's go, we'll pick them up." They went downstairs to hear the second gong, and when they reached the gate of the Gongyuan, the third sound happened, and the gate of the Gongyuan was slowly opened. The candidates inside filed out. Among them were many of their acquaintances, including Wei Chen, Song Zheng, and Ji Hao, as well as less familiar students from the Kuazijian, Yun Xingxuan, Feng Chenxiang, and Zhang Jinghao. As soon as they came out, the servants at home rushed up to pick them up. Lu Huan had the most people around, because his home was in the capital. Not only did the servants come, but also a lot of servants, including Bai Shan and the others, surrounded Lu Huan at once. "How was the test? Have you answered all of them? Is the question difficult?" Because Lu Huan and Bai Dalan's uncle Chang Hung entered the examination room together, they happened to be not far from each other, so they came out together. As soon as the two came out, they were dizzy with these questions. With so many candidates around, Chang Hung didn't dare to talk big, so he could only say modestly, "Fortunately, I answered a few questions, so I won't give in blank." Lu Huan calmed down and said, "I think I did well in the test. I am familiar with all the questions and answered them. I think I did well in the test." Gro Hung. The students on the side. So after the scene was quiet for a while, someone said loudly, "This year's questions are not difficult, I remember all the scriptures that I took the test, and I answered them all." "Is that so? Congratulations and congratulations, it just so happened that you answered it well, at least the papers are all filled. Before I took the exam, I thought the Mingjing exam would be difficult. I didn't expect it to be so easy. It's easier than the questions given by the gentlemen in the academy." Hearing this, Lu Huan felt uneasy, and whispered to Bai Shan, "So many people do well in the exam, can I still pass the exam?" "Bai Shan, the exam is over, it's useless to think too much, let's go to dinner." Lu Huan hesitated, "If I don't pass the exam, my grandfather will beat me, right?" Man Bao comforted him, "No, didn't you already say it before, to celebrate your title after the exam?" Lu Huan was even more uneasy, but the Mingjing exam was opened by His Majesty. "If I fail the exam, my grandfather will definitely beat me up." Bai Shan and Bai Erlang pulled him and said, "So you have to take advantage of the 2 days before the list is released, or else you miss it, but you really miss it?" Lu Huan. Seeing that he was so sad that Man Bao was about to cry, he couldn't help cheering up and comforting him, it's okay, we'll invite you to dinner." After 2 days of trouble with my friends, Man Bao was in a much better mood. On the third day, the Mingjing released the list. Several people followed and ran to see. Bai Shan said, "I heard that this time the Mingjing will take a total of 280 scholars. Bai Erlang was speechless, "It's almost 10 times more than the Jinshi test, and I also want to test the Mingjing. Bai Shan said, this fall, you can try the Jinshi test again. If you don't pass the test, you can take the Mingjing test next year. Otherwise, you will have to wait for the system. Bai Erlang said, how can there be a regular subject in the system? Brother, if you still can't pass the test in the fall, would you like to test the Mingjing with me? Bai Dalan. He calculated his age and nodded. Bai Shan said, big brother, but it's not necessary. He said, I heard that last year, the eldest brother was not low, and he was one step away from entering. Now your reputation in the capital is not bad. If you don't win this year, you can try for a few more years. Even if you are an official, you are still 2 points better than the Mingjing in the imperial examinations. Bai Erlang muttered, isn't they all selected for the imperial examination, and they all have to go up step by step, and I don't think there is much difference. Bai Shandao said, it's not obvious in the first 10 years, but after 10 years you will see the difference when you want to be promoted again. He said, the county magistrates of the same rank will be considered top ranking in the assessment, but when they are promoted, they will choose the Jinshi department first, and the Mingjing department will stay, but if there is a Jinshi department with the same conditions next year, you will be selected. What about the fight? Bai Dalan also nodded, yes, the gentleman in the school also said that if you can get a Jinshi, you can get a Jinshi. If you can't pass the test, or you really don't want to take the test, you can go to the Mingjing or other subjects. Bai Erlang pondered for a while, puzzled, why didn't you let me insist on taking the Jinshi exam? Bai Shandao, because you don't have the perseverance to study. He said, Brother Hall, even if you study for another 10 years, you can persevere, can you? Bai Erlang, he can't. Bai Dalan, he can, but he is not very happy. Lu Huan also thought about it from the spot, slapped his mouth and said, I can't either. Therefore, many of the students who came to take the exam this time were students from Quazijian. When the Mingjing division released the list, there were more people watching the list than the Jinshi division, and it was even more lively. Everyone was crowded. Bai Shan and the others simply didn't crowd it, but went into the tea house and let the servants watch. After a long time, Ji Yu ran back with messy hair and shouted, you hit, Lang Jun. Lu Huan was overjoyed, stood up in a hurry, rushed out to hold the message, and asked happily, how many, are there any top? 120th. Ji Yu smiled so much that his eyes narrowed, and he said happily, young master, you are still in the middle. Lu Huan was a little disappointed. Bai Shan and the others had already stepped forward to congratulate him, congratulations, you have a treat today. Even Chang Hung also congratulated him, and then waited even more anxiously. Bai Erlang's eyes were sharp, and he saw his elder brother's servant by the window. Seeing a happy expression on his face, he had a guess in his heart. He immediately stuck his head out and asked, 11mo, has your uncle been caught? After washing the ink, he raised his head, and when he saw the second young master, he shouted loudly, I got it, my uncle got the 87th place in the exam. Chang Hung in the room also heard it and was overjoyed. See you at 6 p.m. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2400. Lu Huan was also overjoyed, so he took Chang Heng's hand and said, we will be the same department in the future. Bai Erlang always felt strange when he heard this. If he went to study the Ming classics next year, wouldn't he be one class later than Lu Huan? They are classmates turned seniors. Bai Erlang took his eyes and glanced at him. Lu Huan didn't realize that, although his ranking was not very high, he was very happy to be able to pass the exam. He grabbed Bai Shan and Bai Erlang and greeted them, "When my house has a wedding wine, you must come to my house for a wedding wine." Bai Shan smiled and nodded, "You have to write our posts yourself." Lu Huan patted his chest and said, "Don't worry, I wrote all the posts of the classmates of Qiaozijian and Kongwen and myself." When Lu Huan went back, he wrote a post in person. Not only did he write invitations to his classmates in Kongwengan and Qiaozijian, but he also wrote posts to Nai Kenjun, who was with him at the time, and a few soldiers who played well with him. After all, this banquet was not only because he passed the Mingjing test, but also because he had to be a county male. That's right, the celebratory banquet for his title has been dragging on. Lu Huan personally wrote a post to Bai Shan, Zhou Man, and others, and Zhou Liru also got a separate one. A post is a gift. After receiving the post, Zhou Liru can't be counted with his sister-in-law, so he must also prepare a gift. But she also has money now. Her parents are not in the capital, and her brothers and sisters don't care about her money. She has taken all the spoils and the money she earned with her sister-in-law to the western regions. So she dragged out her suitcase from under the bed, took out a piece of gold, put it in after thinking about it, took out a piece of silver, and changed to a smaller one, thinking, what gift should she give? Man Bao went into Huangchuang, and Zhou Liru could only ask his uncle for advice. Bai Shan smiled generously and said, "You are a junior, just follow us. Where can you use a separate ceremony?" Bai Erlang also took out the style of his elders and nodded again and again, "Yes, we will prepare a copy for you when the time comes. You don't need to go with your uncles, ouch." Bai Shan said, "What are you yelling, why are you her uncle? Why can't you call me uncle? You are his uncle, so why don't you call me uncle?" Zhou Liru didn't condone him and said, "Second young master, my aunt didn't let me call you uncle." Bai Erlang said solemnly, "I am your aunt's junior brother. You are not only your aunt's niece, but also your aunt's apprentice. What would you call my uncle?" Zhou Liru was stunned, but looking at Bai Erlang's face, he couldn't make it out. After holding it for a long time, he could only say, "I also read with Mr. Zhuang. If you have the guts, you can call your aunt and senior sister to go." Zhou Liru turned around and ran, "That's not calling you, you don't have to say it, I'll figure it out myself." Zhou Liru, who was thinking about it, just took the money and went to the bookstore to choose a good set of 4 treasures of the study for Lu Huan, and also bought a complete set of pen holders, pen washers, etc. Anyway, she prepared all the things on the desk, and then waited. Eat wedding wine. Lu Shangshu was also very happy. He let go of his high-spirited heart. Lu Huan was able to pass the exam and finally lived up to the emperor's expectations. This can also gag the mouths of many people, lest they all think that Lu Huan's title is not worthy of the name. In fact, his grandson still has some skills. Man Bao has already taken leave to live in Huangchuang, and can only take time off to go out for a drink. As soon as she asked for leave, only Imperial Physician Lu was left in the entire Huangchuang. On the day she left, Imperial Physician Lu stood at the gate of the courtyard and looked at her with his arms raised. Man Bao smiled at him to please him, then turned around and ran away. She went home and changed into a set of clothes before going to Liu's house for a banquet with Bai Shan and the others. The Lu family was lively. Their family has not held a wedding banquet for a long time. Even Lu Shangshu and Mrs. Lu are celebrating their birthdays, and there are very few guests at the banquet. This time is the biggest one in recent years. Therefore, relatives and friends, even those who are far away in Jinyang, they all came by themselves. Lu Shangshu was surprised. His post didn't go that far, but the visitor was a guest, so he could only whisper to the old lady, "Hurry up and let someone go to the restaurant to order a banquet, as many orders as you can, don't lose face." The old lady responded with a smile on her face, and frowned when she returned to the room with the old mama's hand. Why are there so many relatives and friends? Are there so many posts from our family? Old madam, this is a good thing. The second young master hasn't gotten married yet, so it's just at this time. The old lady waved her hand and said, "Go and see what that silly boy is doing. This is such a blessing that he can't bear it." The old lady smiled slightly and helped her sit down on the chair. After drinking a sip of tea, the old lady said, "Go and call Mr. Lu, and I will arrange a banquet with him from outside." And suddenly there are so many guests, don't care if they are really congratulating, or have other plans, comers, it's a guest, we always have to greet people. Yes. Man Bao and the others who had made great achievements with Lu Huan sat in a corner of the tables in front of the lobby. It was not a particularly central location, but because Lu Huan, the master, was here, it was indeed attracting attention. Nai joined the army on this trip to the western regions, and came back and jumped. Although he did not have a title, he could get a real job, and he was very happy. As soon as he saw Lu Huan, he laughed and patted him on the shoulder. "Lu Gongzi is too polite, and he specially sent us such a nice post. You just have to drink and say it, brothers will do it no matter where you are. Come." Lu Huan smiled and said, "Of course I have to post it. The post for you is still written by me. The paintings on it are all drawn by me." These were the two biggest happy events in his life, and he felt it was worth his effort. Nai Kenjun was deeply moved. Lu Yu and the others, who were listening at the next table, were full of jealousy in their hearts, and asked coaxingly, "Lu Huan, did you draw our post yourself?" Lu Huan said embarrassedly, "I wrote your post myself, you don't know the handwriting on it." "Lu Yu, it's not enough for you to write the words. Did you draw the paintings? They only accompanied you for a year when you went to the western regions, but our classmates stayed with you in the palace for 2 or 3 years. Bai Shan smoothed things out and said with a smile, "You can let him go, and let go of your own eyes. If you want his paintings, go back and let him pass the examinations of the Ministry of Rights and the Ministry of Personnel and find time to paint them for you. Hundreds of thousands of sheets, when the time comes, it will fill your house and look at it casually." Zhao Liaolang also said to Lu Yu, "You want the post he painted, but I don't want it, and it wasn't painted by Bai Shan. If you keep it, you might be able to sell it for a few dollars in the future. Do you want to keep Lu Huan's painting on fire?" Lu Huan immediately exclaimed, "You guys are going too far. Although I'm not very good at painting, the orchid above is still very expressive." Zhou Liru said, "It turns out that you painted an orchid, but I thought it was an ear of rice. It means that you can bear hardships and stand hard work, and you are talented and beautiful." Bai Erlang burst into laughter, laughing loudly, and everyone followed. See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2401. The topic was mixed up by everyone laughed, and many people coaxed to drink Lu Huan wine. Lu Huan was quite forthright, and would not refuse anyone who came, but Bai Shan and the others did not dare to let him drink like this, so they asked Nai Shenjun and the others to help Lu Huan to stop the wine. Mrs. Lu saw the scene in her eyes, she frowned slightly, and whispered to the old mama, "Go and see a few young people in the clan, and ask them to come and help their cousins, young people. If people don't know how to restrain themselves, it will be bad if they drink badly." The old lady smiled and answered, and went to find someone herself. So Liu's young clansman quickly came over, hugged Lu Huan and said, "My brother is still young, I will drink half of this cup for him, and let him drink the remaining half to show his respect. Let my nephew drink this wine for my uncle. He is still young. When he gets married in the future, you can pour it hard on him." Bai Shan was stunned, even Bai Dalan was startled, and then turned to see Bai Erlang and Bai Shan. Bai Erlang and Bai Shan looked at Bai Dalan innocently. When the household minister holds a banquet, the prestige must not be small. There are many people who come, some invited and some uninvited. Of course, Lu Huan couldn't just stay at their table. Lu Shangshu walked around all the tables with him. Even with the help of his clan brothers and nephews, his eyes were red when he turned around. He was drunk. Man Bao gave him a recipe for hangover. The effect is okay, except that it's a bit unpleasant. Although Lu Huan was drunk, he was not stupid. After accepting the prescription, he put it in his arms and planned to use it for his grandfather, but he didn't need it. If you're drunk, just go back and sleep with your head covered. Many guests stared at Lu Huan openly and secretly. After all, he was the protagonist today, and when they saw him like this, they sighed, it's really good luck. Yeah, last year when Zhou Man went out to Beijing, how many people prepared to watch jokes, thinking about what good recipes there could be in the western regions. If there is, if you ask for nothing, they will give it to you. Who would have known that they were so lucky that they actually found the recipe, and it's not a vain trip. When they met His Majesty's Western Expedition, a few people actually followed the Western Expedition Army all the way. It's also Guo Xiao's incompetence. I heard that they all knocked down the Kaosai King city at that time, but they were stunned because they underestimated the enemy and lost the city. No wonder your Majesty is so angry that someone died and even took an official position. In the end, didn't he seal it back again? His Majesty also personally treated him for the funeral, which is considered to save his face. Whoever fought with His Majesty in those days died and your Majesty did not give them funerals. Even those majesties who fought with His Majesty and finally surrendered after several battles did not care, let alone Guo Xiao. If you want me to tell me, it's not all luck that Lu Huan can have today. Doesn't he still have a family background? One person said, if he wasn't Lu Shangshu's grandson, would he have been named a county man? Look at Zhou Man, he is still the chief officer of the embassy. Well, it is not only the first effort to find the cowpox recipe, but also the first effort to siege the city. I heard that at that time, she and Bai Shan feigned to enter the city together, and finally opened the city gate for General Ashina together. As a result, you can see that she has risen one rank, and she doesn't even have the slightest title. Hey, why did she come? Didn't she say that the Thai hospital is doing a vaccination test at Huangzhuang recently? Dr. Xiao is also here. The Imperial Hospital and the Imperial Physician Office have spent a lot of money in the past 2 years. It's a matter of coming and going. Otherwise, it's hard to get the money later. Last time the Imperial Physician's Office asked for a lot of money, what are you going to do with it? I heard that there are several local Imperial Physicians' offices that want to prepare medicinal materials for the summer epidemic, and they need funds from the Imperial Physician's Office in the capital. Shouldn't this be the finances of the local county government? How can the capital be paid by the capital? How many prefectures and counties are there in Dajin? If all prefectures and counties let the capital pay for it, how much money will the treasury give them? More than that, I heard that the Huangzhuang side is looking for the next batch of people, but all the slaves that can be selected from the capital have been selected. Your Majesty is sending people to the Yangzhou area to find and distribute the slaves to various places. More and more people will be asked later, and I don't know if we will be let out. Let the servants in the family vaccinate, they won't bring smallpox back to our house, will they? Man Bao had sharp ears and vaguely heard some discussions. Out of curiosity, he asked Keek to help him listen. Hearing Keek's emotionless retelling of their words, Man Bao angrily took a big meatball and bit it hard. He secretly said, what a bunch of stupid people. People who have had smallpox will not infect others, nor will they get smallpox again. This is common sense. Do we need to use her to spread it again? Bai Shan turned his head to look at her, and saw that the soup was sticking to her cheek. Because he took a big bite of the meatball, his whole face was bulging. He couldn't help laughing. He wiped her face with a handkerchief and asked her in a low voice. Who made you angry? Man Bao didn't speak, but his eyes drifted towards the table gossiping. Bai Shanchao glanced over there, and recognized several adults, all of whom were in the fourth rank and above, and were sub-officers of various ministries. This person is a bit too much. How could Man Bao have a conflict with them? No matter how much Bai Shan thought about it, he couldn't figure it out. Since he couldn't figure it out, he decided to go back and ask her, so he stretched out his hand to put a meatball for her, and said with a smile, "Eat more if you like it." Bai Erlang, who was about to take the meatballs, put down his chopsticks silently. This was the last meatball, and he didn't eat any of them. Bai Dalan gave his brother a chicken leg and coaxed him, "Eat the chicken leg." Bai Erlang, "Brother, I'm not a child anymore. Do I want to lose face by eating chicken legs in front of so many people?" Bai Dalan said, "This chicken is roasted and coated with honey, so do you want to eat it?" Bai Erlang gritted his teeth, "Yes." But he didn't ask for his hand, but ate it directly. After eating almost all the dishes on the table, all kinds of adults also began to look for them with wine glasses. Obviously, Lu Huan's toasting at each table was not enough, and he had to sit and be brought up to make a toast. Bai Shan and the others have experienced several scenes of Bai Dalan and Saturday Lang getting married. Walking into the backyard, when asked, he said, "We will send him to change clothes, and we will send him back in a while." So he dragged Lu Huan to the back. Man Baila slid with Li Ru last week, looked at Lu Huan's face carefully and said, "Pour out the soup, otherwise he won't want to sleep at night." So they sent a message to get the hangover soup. Bai Shan and Bai Erlang put the man on the soft couch in the room and covered him with a quilt. They bypassed the screen and sat in the small study by the window, and said with a long sigh of relief, "The Lu family has too many relatives and friends." Bai Erlang felt a little lingering, "Brother, I'm about to order a drink. Will they drink me like that?" Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2402. Bai Dalan comforted him and said, "No, it's not you alone. There are also Bai Shan and Man Bao. Aren't the two of them together? They will definitely go to Bai Shan by then." "Bai Shan, big brother, you're not being kind like this. You're all relatives and friends together, so why would you give me one?" It took a long time for the message to bring the hangover soup. Bai Shan took it and asked curiously, "Why so long? The big kitchen is too busy, and I can't find time to make the hangover soup. It is made by the fire in the small kitchen, so it is slower." With the help of him and Man Bao, Bai Shan poured Lu Huan a bowl of sober soup, and asked, "Is there someone in front of you? Shouldn't Lu Huan go out again?" "Yes, I have already reported back to the old lady. The old lady told us to keep an eye on the second young master and the courtyard gate. The second young master was not allowed to go to the front again, saying that the old grandfather and the clan young masters would deal with it, and no idlers were allowed to wait in the courtyard." The message said with a smile, "The ladies of Langjun must be tired too." The old lady asked people to clean up the side room of the yard. If the ladies of Langjun don't dislike it, they will rest here for a while, and there will be actors playing music in the garden after a while. Dance. The old lady also invited 2 storytellers to tell stories at the pavilion, and the ladies of Langjun can also go to relax. Zhou Liru asked curiously, "Which actor did you hire?" After the message, he smiled and said, "I invited Miss Fenghua from the Jiaofang division." Zhou Liru's eyes lit up, and immediately whispered to Man Bao, "Little aunt, Miss Fenghua's dance is really good." Man Bao wondered, "Have you seen it?" Zhou Liru nodded again and again. "Last time we took a break in the school, and the Jiaofang division sold tickets to perform in Qingfeng building. We pooled money to watch one." Man Bao asked, "How much is a game?" "The lobby ticket is 20 cents, and the TU order will be counted separately," Zhou Liru said. but we are still students and haven't made any money yet, so we just went in to watch and didn't order tea and snacks. Jolie looked like a star, she did a dance at the time, but she looked good, she looked good. Manbao was also interested, otherwise, let's go and see. Yin he didn't quite understand, have you never seen dancing in the palace? Li Ru said she danced very well. Yin he smiled and said, no matter how good she dances, no one in the palace will be good. If she was good, she could have entered the palace to dance long ago. Jolie Ru said, some people say that she may be elected to the palace this year, and it will not be easy for us to see her dance at that time. The Jiaofang division is in charge of the imperial court, and the best ones are naturally sent to the palace, while the inferior ones stay outside to greet various princes and nobles. So everyone went to the back garden to watch, and many guests in front also moved here to continue drinking and enjoying singing and dancing. There is a lotus pond behind the Lu family's backyard. At this time, a high platform was built on the lotus pond with a dock. 7 or 8 beautiful little girls jumped onto the high platform lightly from a boat, and then spun around to the 4 sides of the platform with a smile. A woman in a red dress threw out the red shawl, leaped from among them, and landed lightly in the middle of the table, facing away from them. She looked back and smiled with a half-masked face, her forehead lit with flower tins, revealing only a pair of star-like eyes. Manbao was stunned for a moment. There were many people in the banquet who were just as stunned as she was. Some people dropped their wine glasses and stared blankly at the woman in the middle of the high platform. She smiled lightly, like a deer in the mountains, and she was as beautiful as a lotus in the water, but the corner of her mouth was slightly hooked, and she looked at you with clear eyes, and you felt your heart skip a beat. Manbao covered his heart at this moment, and his eyes could not wait to stick to her, causing Bai Shan next to him to keep looking at her. Bai Dalan and Bai Erlang recovered one step later than Bai Shan, but they also recovered quickly and sighed, it's so beautiful. Yin Or was very puzzled, looked left and right, and asked, does it look good? Manbao then looked back at him, then turned to look at Bai Shan, and saw that Bai Shan was staring at her with some dissatisfaction. She walked out of the two of them, walked over to Bai Erlang, and exhaled. Said, you are all immortals, I don't understand, this is what mortals like. Bai Erlang also nodded, glanced at Bai Shan and Yin Or, and enjoyed the dance on the stage with Manbao, it's better than Zibing and the others. Manbao said, West Cake and their sword dances are beautiful. It is. Bai Shan, the pace she uses is also the pace of the sword dance. Manbao, who had been staring at people's faces, reluctantly shifted his gaze from her face to the pace of her feet, then lifted up and continued to stare at people's faces. Strange, I've also seen people who are prettier than her. Yes, but she dances and looks good. Jolie Ru also clutched her chest until the dance ended, and the actors left the stage to change to the next group, and she patted her chest lightly and said, it's so beautiful, it's better than the last time I was in King Fenglu. It looks good. Bai Shan urged them, okay, we're all done, let's go back and see if Lu Huan is awake. Wait a minute, maybe she's still performing. Bai Shan just stared at her, then beckoned a servant and asked, how many times does Miss Fenghua dance today? Just one. Bai Shan turned his head and said to Manbao, let's go. But in a while, Miss Fenghua will sing a tune. Manbao, who was disappointed, immediately lit up, really? Is it long? The servant knew that they were the distinguished guests of the second young master, so he said respectfully, it won't be long, if the lady is in a hurry to watch, the young and the steward will reply, and maybe they will be able to come to power sooner. Manbao recalled, I have so much power? Is it possible to meet Miss Fenghua in private? The servant was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, if it's not easy for others to see you, but the lady should be fine, you should sit and wait for a while, and then go to the steward to arrange it. After all, he should lead them to find a place to sit down. Madame Tang, who was behind a flower bush, got up and shouted, "Man Bao, bring your niece over to play with us." Man Bao stepped forward immediately. When Mrs. Tang saw Bai Shan and the others following, she pointed at them and smiled, "What are you guys doing here? Why, are you afraid that I won't be able to eat your sisters and sisters? Or some people are worried, so they must do it in person." Staring. A table of officials laughed, looked at the three young people and said with a smile, "Oh, what are you driving them away? I think they are good to keep, and it's good to talk to us to relieve the boredom." Madame Tang laughed and scolded, "Let the county and the concubine tease you and relieve your boredom. Are you drinking too much yellow soup?" Madame Tang turned her head and smiled at Bai Shan, "You guys can play, don't worry, we will show you your daughter-in-law." Everyone smiled and saw Bai Shan and the three of them blushing and saluting, and they said in front of Man Bao, "The three children of the Bai family are pretty good. I don't know how the children from the main branch look like. How is it, Mrs. Joe, have you seen it?" Next chapter at 10:30 p.m. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2403. After thinking about it, Man Bao nodded, and commented fairly, "Not as good looking as Bai Shan." A group of women laughed, pointed to Madame Tang and said, "If you ask her whether Master Tang is good looking or Master Yang is good looking, she will definitely say Master Tang as well." Madame Tang pouted. A lady sighed and said, "If it were me, I would definitely say it was Mr. Yang, but lover's eyes see 11 she, so the words of this loving person can't be trusted." Man Bao asked curiously, "Mrs. Han and Lord Han have no love?" The table was quiet. Madame Tang burst into laughter after a pause. She reached out and tapped Man Bao's forehead and said with a smile to Madame Han, "Tong Yanwuji, Madame Han, don't bother with her." Mrs. Han smiled slightly and said, "What do I care about with her? That's true." She raised her head over there and motioned for Man Bao to look. "Nyo, the Lord Han you said is there, but he can't be called Lord Han now. He was sacked from the official position because of a mistake last month, and his name is Han now." "That's fine, sir." Man Bao, the world is changing so fast. She didn't react for a while. Mrs. Tang reached out and patted the back of her hand and said, "Okay, I know you're wronged, but it's not like you don't know that she was locked in Huangzhuang for the first month. How do you know what happened outside?" Someone laughed and said, "Even outside, it's hard for Mrs. Joe to notice it. After all, she's busy with work, and she can't be as leisurely as us. Let's take a look at what's going on in the capital." Mrs. Han said quietly, "So you've all seen something new about my family." Some of the ladies slapped their faces, some comforted her, and some apologized to her. Man Bao and Zhou Liru were both confused. They lowered their heads and silently touched a piece of dessert to eat, and drank a sip of tea. When Madame Tang finally finished socializing, she took the two of them to sit at the storytelling pavilion, and the two of them breathed a sigh of relief. Mrs. Tang deliberately found a corner to talk to them in a low voice, "Why are you the only ones here, and Mrs. Lu didn't come?" It is said that Lu Huan and Bai Shan have such a friendship, and Bai Shan now has a title, so the Lu family should give Mrs. Lu a separate invitation. Man Bao said, "I sent the post, but Grandma Lu decided early in the morning that she would go up the mountain to fast for half a month, so she didn't come. But Bai Shan is the head of the household, so it's the same when he comes." Madame Tang was curious, "Fasting at this time?" Man Bao said, "Isn't it about to clear and bright? And Bai Shan is going to take an exam." Grandma Lu said that fasting is good for God's blessing. Mrs. Tang, "Oh." Man Bao obediently sat on the chair, held a cup of tea and asked, "Mrs. Tang, did Swexian Tang come?" We didn't seem to see him when we were eating. Madame Tang looked at her and said, "Didn't you find out, today is not a day off?" Man Bao stared, then. Mrs. Tang said quietly, "They are all asking for leave or absent from work to eat. Others can be absent from work, but he is not good at absent. He heard that there was a case somewhere, so he went to investigate the case." Man Bao was satisfied. "I also asked for leave." Madame Tang burst into laughter and said, "We said when we were just having dinner, that you seldom showed up after you came back this time, and someone who wanted to invite you to see a doctor couldn't recruit anyone, so in the end, he had to ask Dr. Lu to help you come to your door." When Mrs. Tang said this, she looked at Zhou Liru, who was sitting beside her, and asked with a smile, "How is your niece studying? Maybe she is a teacher." Man Bao said, "How can she be so fast? She only studied for a few years." She said, "I have to study for a few more years in school before I leave school." Mrs. Tang, "Isn't it enough to study for 5 years? She has the foundation, so 3 or 4 years is almost the same, right?" Man Bao shook his head, "That's just learning a little bit of flesh and blood. It will take at least 4 or 5 years to be like her brothers and sisters. Whether it is Lu Sunyang, Zheng Gu and Zheng Xiao, they have all been immersed in medicine since childhood. No matter how much they have been taught or not, at least they have been immersed in it all the time. What they know is that Zhou Liru cannot compare with them now of." Among the 4 disciples, the most powerful and the one who learned the best was actually Zheng Gu, and then Lu Sunyang. Madame Tang nodded slightly and said in a low voice, "Because of you, there have been many female patients who have sought medical treatment with female doctors in the past 2 years, and some of them have come from other places on purpose to ask to see you." Man Bao asked, "Mrs. Tang also has relatives and friends who want to see me?" Mrs. Tang smiled slightly, nodded her forehead and said, "You are really a clever ghost, yes, not 1 or 2. But you are busy as soon as you come back. You have been in the palace before, but when you came out, you went directly to the Huangchuang. I don't want to beg you." Man Bao, "I took 4 days off in the first 10 days, why didn't you tell me?" Madame Tang smiled slightly and said, "You just came out of Huangchuang, so you must be very tired. How could I beg at the door at that time? Actually, I shouldn't be begging you now, but their illness is not very good. That's why I want to beg you." Man Bao hesitated for a while and asked, "What's the disease? If it's not very private, I can recommend Dr. Ding and Dr. Tao, or I can ask Imperial Dr. Lu to take a look. You also know that it's normal for me to be in Huangzhuang for 10 days and a half months and not be able to come out. This time, I may have to stay for a month. It's a little inconvenient for people to see a doctor at this time. I was able to come out today because of the banquet, or because Xiao Yuanzheng agreed to let her come out because it was Lu Shangshu's banquet. Just as the guests at the table had speculated earlier, they needed Lu Shangshu's support very much at this time, and it was something Xiao Yuanzheng could not ask for by taking part in the banquet to bring the relationship closer. But thinking about it again, it is impossible to ask for leave because of seeing other patients. Madame Tang thought for a while, then whispered a few words in her ear. Man Bao frowned slightly, "Is that so? Did Sunyang have a look?" Madame Tang nodded and sighed, "Just because I've seen it, I've been taking needles and medicine for 8 days, and it doesn't have much effect." Man Bao waited and nodded, "Then I'll retire early in the afternoon and go see with my sister-in-law." Madame Tang nodded immediately with a smile, "Okay, I'll call you to leave together then." Important things were discussed. Mrs. Tang could see that she didn't like listening to books, so she kept looking at the lotus pond, and smiled, "Okay, I won't bother you to see the beauties, let's go." Man Bao stood up on tiptoe and glanced over there. It was too far and his vision was a little blurry. Zhou Liru whispered, "It's not Miss Fenghua." Man Bao stood up and said to Madame Tang, "No hurry." Mrs. Tang, is that Feng Hua so good looking? Man Bao and Zhou Liru nodded together. Since the person he liked didn't appear on the court, Man Bao was free to care about other things. Why did Master Han get fired? The prostitute, I got into a fight with someone in the Spring Breeze building, and the matter was big, and the censor who was standing guard outside saw it, and made a scene in the court. Mrs. Tang said with a smile, it's not just dismissed from office, he has also been fined. Less money. The money was fined by Master Tang. The second day, ha 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 ha. See you tomorrow. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2404. Man Bao asked in a low voice, Mrs. Han is not angry with you. Mrs. Tang glanced at her and said, why are you angry with me? This trivial matter between men won't affect our relationship for the time being, let's make it more serious. Man Bao thought about it for a while and then affirmed, the fined money is not Mrs. Han's. Madame Tang laughed out loud, gave her a wink and said, you are the smart one. Man Bao smiled and dragged Zhou Liru to see if he could see Miss Feng Hua. The two quietly approached the lotus pond, stood on their toes and looked over there, just as a boat slowly docked, and the two aunts and nephews watched excitedly. Two maids got off the boat, carried out a thick wooden board and put it on the boat and the table, and then a few girls in dancing costumes happily ran off the boat and jumped ashore. Feng Hua followed them and jumped up with her skirt, the flower tin on her forehead gleamed in the sunlight, both aunts and nephews lit up, and they raised their feet to go there. As a result, someone was faster than them, and a few people turned out from the path behind a tree. The one in the lead waved a fan and smiled and looked at Feng Hua, Miss Feng Hua, come and have a drink with us. Feng Hua's smile did not change much, and she bowed her knees with a smile and said, Lang Jun has a request that should not be refused, but I have to go to the master's house to take orders. Lang Jun might as well go back first, and then wait until we have time. How about serving? Who is the director of Jiaofang who brought you here today? Let him come over, sir, I really ordered you to accompany me all the way. Zhou Liru frowned and couldn't help but go to see his sister-in-law. Man Bao also frowned, and after glancing at those people, he found that some people were familiar, and some people had never met before. The most familiar is of course the leader, Mr. Han, who has just been talked about by them for a long time. Man Bao glanced at the peony bushes at his feet. There was no particularly beautiful flower color, but he also picked a red-petaled flower, and then took the flower and stepped forward. Miss Feng Hua. A group of little girls from Jiaofangxi were turning pale and at a loss when Master Han said, and when they heard this voice, they looked back. Man Bao walked over with a smile, handed the flower in his hand to Feng Hua, and said with a smile, there are no good peony here, so I can only find one to borrow a flower to offer to Buddha. How about I put it on your hairpin? Miss Feng Hua was surprised. She didn't know Zhou Man, but she glanced at a few of Mr. Han, and saw that they didn't speak. Some people even said that Mr. Han wanted to leave, so she guessed that this person should not be low. At least these gentlemen don't seem to dare to offend her. So he smiled and saluted, humbly thanking him. Seeing her bowing her head slightly, Man Bao put the flower on her hairpin, took a step back and admired it, then nodded and praised, sure enough, this flower is not as good as you, and the person is much more delicate than the flower. Feng Hua lowered his head and smiled, looking at Lord Han and the others in embarrassment. Man Bao followed her gaze and smiled at them. Han Dalan Kun, why don't you drink in front of you? Are you thinking of Mrs. Han and the others? Do you want me to take you to find them? One of them pulled Master Han and said, Da Han, let's go, what are we doing with her? Master Han frowned, Master Zhou, how many official prostitutes do you want to make? What am I going to do for them? Man Bao said confidently, you are only allowed to ask them to drink, and you are not allowed to ask them to talk to me. Lord Han choked, you are a little lady, what are you doing with a group of ladies? Man Bao said, speak up, you think I'm you, you have to find the opposite sex. Anyway, they were invited by the Lu family to entertain guests, and I'm also a guest, whoever grabs them depends on their ability. Lord Han was so choked that he still wanted to speak, when Zhou Man's eyes suddenly lit up, he waved his hands behind them, and shouted, "Little Lady Lu, we are here." Lady Lu, who was passing by with her servants, ran over after hearing the words, glanced curiously at Lord Han, and they asked Zhou Man, "Miss Zhou, what are you doing here? My grandmother mentioned you to the guests just now. I was about to introduce you to a few old ladies, but as soon as I turned around, I couldn't find you." Man Bao pointed at Feng Hua and said, "I wanted to play games, and I was looking for someone, but I happened to like them, and as a result, Han Dalan Jun also liked them." When Lu Xiaoniang heard the words, she showed the smile of the host, and was about to smile to reassure her. By the way, after negotiating, Han Dalanjun waved his hand impatiently, okay, I don't have to ask them to accompany the wine, let's go. Seeing them leave, Man Bao smiled and said to Lady Lu, "Thank you." She turned her head and said to Feng Hua and the others, "You guys should be busy." Feng Hua took a deep look at Zhou Man, then bowed his knees and saluted and led the people back. Lu Xiaoniang watched them walk away, clicked her tongue, and said to her, "You are so kind to Xiangzi. Man Bao said, "Then I want her to be enough for me to see and feel pity." "Which old lady wants to see me?" "I don't know." "You definitely don't know, they came from Jinyang." Lu Xiaoniang showed her and explained, "There are old ladies from various families, and I don't know if they are here to congratulate my cousin or to see you." "Of. I have something to see, I must have come to congratulate your cousin." "That's not necessarily true, even if you don't see a doctor, you can also see something strange," Lu Xiaoniang said. "You don't know, you have a great reputation now, the first female imperial doctor in this dynasty, the first female official who can go to court. Recently, women's schools in Beijing are very popular, and many families of small officials send their girls to study, thinking that it would be great if they could enter a restaurant like you in the future as an editor." "Man Bao, I'm just compiling medical books." "So more girls are going to study medicine recently?" Even Zhou Liru nodded and whispered to Man Bao, "You don't know, little aunt, I went back to study at the Imperial Physician's office this year and saw a lot of new classmates, all of them new students last year, many girls." Only then did Mrs. Lu discover Zhou Liru. She turned her head to look over, and asked, "Do you want to be an imperial physician in the future?" Zhou Liru nodded, "This is my ideal. Not only do I want to be an imperial physician, but I will also write medical books like my sister-in-law in the future, and try my best to see if I can become an editor. It is the dream of all doctors to be able to compile medical books," she said. "Good ambition." A group of old ladies turned out from behind the shiping and laughed. "The little girl can have such an ambition, but it seems that our group of immortals is too old-fashioned. The little girl is also a child of the Zhou family." Man Bao led Zhou Liru and everyone to salute, and looked at Madame Shangshu curiously, "Where is the old lady going?" Mrs. Shangshu smiled and said, "I was about to lead them to the front to listen to the book, but it just so happened that you guys came over. Let's go, let's listen to the book together." Where did the group of them go to listen to books? They were clearly using the name of listening books to say other things and have fun. As soon as they sat down, someone asked Zhou Man, "This is Zhou Tai. He looks so young. How old are you this year? Can you get engaged?" It's too cold today, see you at 6 o'clock at night."